So everybody, welcome to Off the Crypto Cuff. Now, welcome to our table where we're just having a friendly chat and trying to learn. I'm Jeff, my friend Jesse, and let's just get into it. So we're recording early, and today was actually kind of fun. It happens quite a bit during crypto bull markets. There was a liquidation that happened, and I was like, well. And that's what my guess was, because immediate news didn't actually show it. And apparently $300 million of Bitcoin futures just evaporated. So, and it causes the entire market to slide. If people do look for opportunities to buy during the bull market, this is typically the time to do it because it's heavier on the downside than normal. And you can find, and if you're been eyeballing certain cryptos, it'd be the time to look at them. Again, nothing that we ever say is financial advice. It's just some of the things that I look for and do personally. So I did actually end up picking up more Casper and XRP.
Did you? Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not. Yeah. So I wasn't paying attention today, obviously. So. Yeah. So what are you drinking there?
Oh, yeah. Well, rounding off or finishing off the Diplomatico.
Okay.
I did actually have this is a blended rum, and they actually do a special edition of the 3 different rums that they mix to create this. So they actually do different distilling processes to actually get to this. Not a fan of the individual stuff, and it's amazing that those 3 things combine to make this. It's actually kind of neat.
Like the blends.
Mm-hmm.
I got the I think of Jefferson's.
It's off camera.
Is it? Jeez.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, small batch. Yep.
Yep. Very small batch. It's a go-to for me. Jefferson's pretty good. It's easy. Just drinking straight with a little ice in it.
Okay.
I was mowing the grass earlier, so it's kind of hot. So
I
was thinking neat, but then I was like, yeah, it's enough of that.
Enough of that. Drinking piles on the lawn.
Yeah.
So one thing we kind of started talking about earlier, just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Because, part of financial freedom a little bit is being able to have anonymity to how you're doing purchases. And part of the video, and I don't know if you had to watch it, but apparently currently the digital ID market is a $30 billion a year market. And it started about 4 years ago. And don't quote me on that. But basically, the growth rate's been about $5 billion a year. And by 2030, it's projected to be about $100 billion a year for digital IDs. And Algorand is trying to get heavy into that space. That's why I said I could argue both sides of this. Part of it is that, when it comes to contract law, tort, and other things, knowing exactly who the 2 parties are in that deal and being able to arbitrate any conflict in that deal on either side requires known verified ID. Otherwise, you could just defraud somebody if you're completely anonymous and walk away from a contract like that. That's one half of the story. The other half of the story is that and if people aren't aware, is like 90% of cryptos are pseudonymous, which means you give enough breadcrumbs about what you're doing, people can figure out who you are. It's how the Silk Road guy got caught, even though it was a Bitcoin purchased website. I was only pseudonymous, and they found out who he was, where he lived, all that stuff. Because they were able to track those things. It's one of the reasons why crypto is for criminals and they use it for money laundering. It's an absolute myth. Mm-hmm. Criminals use the US dollar. Why? Because you can take a briefcase, you can pass it to somebody, it's 100% anonymous. So it's like, how do we deal with these privacy issues, and going forward. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. It was a really good conversation. Anna said they touched on NFTs and other things, but I can bring that up later. I just wanted to touch on the digital ID side of that first.
So what are you asking me to try?
Oh, what are your thoughts on it?
In what direction? What do you mean? I guess.
No, either way, it's just like, what's your gut reaction? I was like, if somebody said you have to have a digital ID on a blockchain, it's going to get signed by the government, then it becomes your passport, your driver's license. You use it for signing contracts for your next mortgage on your house.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if that became basically a mandate, I mean, the difference between what we have today and that projected future of these digital IDs is they're on your digital wallet.
Right.
You have control over your identity.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right? In other words, the amount of metadata that you disclose to somebody, you have control over.
I think that's where I would I think that's where we're heading. It makes sense because of the way we're heading with everything with crypto potentially being, like you said, signing contracts. You could literally buy a house, with the exchange and stuff like that through the exchange. So if you have control of it and can maintain the anonymity of it as you please, then I guess why not? Because it's just another way. To me, it secures your identification a little more, because then you're a little more protected. I feel like that's one of the things about crypto is it's much more safer potentially, and like they say how it's less likely to be hacked. I guess generally people are hacked because they've given up their information. They're giving their account information to people, so it's it's not necessarily like a hacker breaking in through code. It's usually somebody being coached to give information. So we'll always have that as people because we're acceptable.
Right. Yeah, because right now, to prove who you are, it's social security number, driver's license number. There's these fixed things. If people know enough about you, they can pretend to be you without being you. But if it's a token that only exists on your wallet, and we can actually see, it's like, yes, this thing exists here. It hasn't moved. And this is the wallet that's actually making the signage with this key. It's verified that it's you and nobody trying to pretend to be you, because nobody could reproduce that key.
Yeah, it's like an NFT, the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, like that's what it is. It's your NFT. You own it. So nobody else has that NFT, like the same thing. So and that was the whole craze about it. But I feel like that is just the beginning of what could potentially be when it comes to, like you said, like your identification and like everything about you and who you are. And then, and using that to sign contracts and to make, transactions in other ways besides just financial, So I mean, I'd probably be more for it than against it, I think.
If it's done
right and you have,
if it's done right, and Algorand's trying to talk about, being decentralized in their implementation. But they're also talking on the other half of it is by creating open standards, because they're trying not to pretend they're going to be the winners in the world.
Yeah.
Which is a weird way of actually them discussing this.
Because they'd be the groundbreakers. So, the groundbreaker is never the winner.
I mean, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
But it's an interesting way of looking at it.
I mean, Apple's a rarity because they broke the ground to these things in your hand, a full computer. But
I could debate you on that.
Yeah. Well, sure. There's been other, BlackBerry.
When it came to the smartphone, BlackBerry was the groundbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
They had the killer applications. They had almost the killer platform. They refused to go keyboardless.
Yeah.
And it was Apple that brought basically the pure touchscreen smartphone, which basically when people take a look at a device and they see this keyboard on it, it's not a general user device.
Right.
Right. You just give them a few buttons, some slide controls, and it just made it extraordinarily easy to use for the average person. That killed BlackBerry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. So
Plus,
BlackBerry was the first mover,
BlackBerry was very expensive in the beginning.
and that was that too.
Yeah. But I mean, Apple's freaking expensive now. So, but there's other options. That's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would go one step further. Your identification. Could you imagine? You know how you have to have all these freaking passwords and two-factor authentication and all this stuff like that.
You just log in with your wallet.
Exactly. Could you imagine just like literally just like it's your wallet and that's it? I mean, that I could see that becoming the future. Like it's, you know.
As I said, I could argue both sides of this, you know, because I said even if it's distributed, it can tend to, considering how a lot of these projects are trying to integrate with the existing system, and the existing system, trying not to put on the tinfoil hat, but they are very combative for people to go up the rings of the ladder. And anything that gives normal people the advantage to make progress in building wealth, that, you know, they don't want to have. And that's where the anonymity side comes in, you know, because you always have, you know, this side is like, well, why do you need privacy? Why do you need this? You know, it's like, well, it's like, do you live in a glass house? Do you have blinds? I mean, you know, there's things that there's a human need for privacy in certain things, whether you think it's legitimate or not, because, you know, people want to have, you know, privacy. You know, it is inherent for our, inherent to our being. Is it's like there are certain things that are just nobody else's business. You know, it's why for the United States, at least, it's why the Fourth Amendment exists. It's like, if you think I'm doing something wrong, collect the evidence and go to a judge, present that evidence to get a warrant, to get the proof. But the evidence has to be compelling enough for the judge to issue that warrant. I mean, that's that Fourth Amendment. And, you know, that goes to our, as American citizens, our right to privacy. You know, that's why I said I could argue both sides of this. I could see all the benefits of it. I'm not denying all those benefits, but at the same time, it's like, you know, for example, I want to go out and buy a gun, right? So what attachments could potentially happen on, you know, to this digital ID, you know, to potentially restrict that, you know, because how hard is it to say, it's like, well, you know, to have, because a lot of things go through Swift, you know, or Visa or MasterCard, is just like, there was actually a period of time where people from the the WEF were actually saying, it's like, oh, you could actually restrict purchases of certain things just for Visa and MasterCard, because they're used for so many different types of purchases.
Right.
You know, even that, you know, that's the kind of thing where the contention, you know, it does have to be implemented correctly to where it actually doesn't step on people. You know, that's the concern.
What if, you know, the other argument is like, okay, so if it goes down this road of like, this is your identity, you have your own, carry your own identification. How do you carry it in a day-to-day, you know, environment, like your day-to-day, you know, life of, you know, do you carry it on your phone? Because that seems like that's something you could lose, right? I mean, so
well,
it comes down to like then we might get into the whole people get a chip, you know, in their skin. So then it's like now you carry it under your skin. You know what I'm saying? It's like it could go down a whole other rabbit hole here. So it's,
yeah, because it was basically this talk. I mean, I think it was, I can't remember the country. I think it was New Zealand, but don't quote me on that. I'm sorry. Yeah. But I think it was New Zealand where there was like this company touting is like, hey, all of our employees got chipped, and they present their palm, and, you know, because, you know, the chip was like right here, and, you know, it would allow them access, you know, to the areas that they had access to, you know, and, you know, everybody was so proud of this thing of being chipped. But I would say it's a kind of, you would just carry it, you know, on your phone. And that's where a lot of things are actually heading. It's like, even with, you know, central banks, we're talking about the central bank digital currencies, but, you know, CBDCs, And that terminology is actually shifting to, oh, we're not actually creating CBDCs. We're going to create another stablecoin.
Yeah.
But it's issued by the central bank.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be a wallet there. But
biometrics is another option,
biometrics. But when it boils down to it, and there's a lot of options for this, and I want to grab the one that actually show up on the camera. It's just like, this is a hardware wallet. Right. This is technically where the ID is stored. The phone is the access to what's on here. Right. I mean, granted, if you're using the Para wallet, if you're talking about Algorand or some other app-based wallet or a software wallet, yes, it's going to be tied to your wallet. But if you're wanting your digital ID and your currencies to be secure, you're going to be looking at something more. And I would say probably the only safe place is something that's hardware based.
Yeah, but that's a physical thing that could be misplaced. So it's,
well, I mean, you still have to have backup. So, like, well, when it's like the ledger, they actually, you back up your keys, with those. Honestly, it's like I would actually probably have, more than one ledger. I would take, and take the keys and mail segments of it to people that I know and trust, so that no one person has the whole set, but the set is backed up in some way. Right. There are ways of doing it. Tangem, yes, they are cards. There are no keys to back up, but their default set on their cheaper set is 2 cards, or you can get 3 cards, and they each have the same private key on them. So that does give you backup. So if you lost, one, you still have the others. So it's not necessarily a complete loss. But yeah, as I said, there are downsides to this. And I'm not trying to chill for Tangem. They're not sponsoring us yet. But they're actually producing rings. That is the wallet. So that way you could just tap your ring on your phone.
Yeah, you're slowly going into a direction of
back in the direction of as like, what's the next step? The chip.
I mean, people are chipping now as for other things.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this, but apparently women can get it's basically like a chip that they get under their skin on their arm for birth control. I didn't know that. That's something I found out recently, 2 months ago.
Yeah, there's these like time release medications, so it's probably a time release thing that actually. Yep.
But it's basically just it's something they insert under the skin, and they don't have to worry about it. And it's so it's just interesting. I think the further we go in the future with technology and people wanting to have everything easy and accessible, we're heading that direction for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as the technology matures and becomes easier to use, it becomes easier for people to adopt the technology. It's just like it's like if you remember when he first learned about Bitcoin and you're looking at it, it'd be like not only were you thinking about is it useful, can you imagine actually using it, but it was actually looking at, well, how do I get it? How do I store it? And we're both technical guys, and even I was like looking at this, be like, there's no way this will take off.
Yeah.
And then, that was like 14, 15 years ago. And now we're looking at it like,
how is it going to get better?
Exactly. Because it keeps progressing. It keeps getting user. And all you need, and just going back to your Apple example, between Apple and BlackBerry, BlackBerry pioneered the smartphone, but Apple took it mainstream.
Yep.
Right. It's just like, and then you could actually go with this example, because there's a lot of people actually make this, reference between where cryptocurrencies and blockchain is technology wise versus the early internet, with the before the .bomb and then after, right? Because you had these companies that tried to do the startups, a lot of them crashed and went away, but you had a lot of these diamonds in the rough. But there was actually some standouts in all this. And I know technically the second one came did streaming a little bit later, but it kind of proves this point, is that the real pioneer, the standout, in the pre-internet era was for video was Blockbuster. Blockbuster failed to adapt to the changing world and the environment. Netflix was initially giving people DVDs by mail. And then they transitioned into, well, we're a streaming service. We're going to digitally deliver things and we're going to make it easy. It's an app on your phone. It's an app on Roku. It's an app on your TV. It's just an app and people can just use it. It's easy, right? BlackBerry, keyboard, arrow keys to switch between applications versus just swiping and pushing an icon with your finger, right? That's BlackBerry versus Apple. So really when this technology transition happens, it's that Netflix moment or that Apple moment. That's what we're waiting for.
Yeah, for sure.
But I kind of agree with you. I think the digital IDs are going to coincide with it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
because we've already been talking about this smart contract stuff for a long time with all those different use cases. Yeah. But you add in that digital ID piece right into it.
Yeah.
I think it's that missing puzzle piece that wasn't quite there.
Right. This is going to take time. And I think when crypto is more adopted, that's when we'll start seeing it. Or that could even be part of the adoption. That creates the adoption.
Okay, so let's do stupid and try to put a timeline to it. So do you think less than 10 years or greater than 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years. Probably less than 10 years. But
by how much?
Yeah, that I can't say.
You can't say?
Yeah.
Basically, that's just basically hit that edge. You're like,
it's
going to be less.
Yeah, I think it's less than 10 years, but not much less. That's
not much less. Okay. So 2030, 2035, somewhere in there.
Yeah, probably. Maybe. I mean, again, AI could change all this too. It's we talked about that last time a little bit with AI. It's like it could depending on how the direction goes with all the AI stuff, it could really, I think it could amplify crypto just because transactionally it makes sense that you're using a technology to do things for you. It's going to need technology to be able to enable it. And I think crypto could potentially do that.
So it's more like the AI personal assistant.
Yeah.
Basically, you say, I want to do this thing. It's like, hey, assistant, I want to buy a home.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay. And then shows you listings. And then it's like that now your assistant's actually helping you find. It's like, I like this one. And then it's like, yes, I will actually pay for it. And then it just does those things for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I see it. It's not because there's too much involved when it comes to bank transactions as far as moving money as it is. There's too much involvement as a person you have to do to qualify who you are in order to make those transactions happen. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have this and you can connect it with your AI, that's your assistant, then you're able to somehow verify that to the AI, which can communicate for you at that point. It's going to need that mm-hmm. technology in order to do that.
There's definitely a lot of glue or other pieces that we put in to get all this to work, but the pieces are there.
Right.
It's been laid. It's just like, ChatGPT 4.0, and it's like some of the things that it can do. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, it's going to put us out of a job one day. I mean,
well, yeah, unless you're a comedian, because apparently you can't write jokes.
Yeah. Well, us technology world.
Yeah.
Coders, especially, I mean, honestly, as a coder, I'd be a little bit scared because you can literally tell it what to do, you want to do, and it will spit the code out for you. Yeah, it's going to take monkeys to be able to code. I mean, honestly, it's
no. it still has a ways to go because
Oh, I agree 100%.
my understanding, I have not personally used it as a tool. I know some people that have.
We won't see it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be retired, or at least hopefully.
Oh God, I hope so.
Yeah. It's
well, I'm thinking within probably the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
5 to 10 years. Not AI would be able to write code that theoretically could reproduce an entry level programmer.
Yeah.
What that means is that it will compile, it will run, it will do what it needs to do. I mean, entry levels jobs are basically done.
Yeah.
You won't see new programmers after that.
Well, that's what I mean. It's going to slowly.
I mean, and then once that happens, then the exponentiality of it goes.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're a programmer not retired at that point, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know,
even
it's really hard to do predictions.
Yeah,
but
no, I agree. I don't like making predictions. I'm not that type of person.
I don't like it, but at the same time, it can be fun just to see. Yeah, because it turns into this thought experiment to see where you are in your own head, because you're always doing this, because we're both engineers.
Yeah.
And it's that technical analysis that we are constantly doing. And it's like, where are we actually pinning, that analysis at? And that's all of that, when we're doing a prediction, that's what we're doing. It's just like, we're just trying to take that needle, and it's like, I think it's going to land here, but we're always reanalyzing. And again, that's
why we struggle with the whole crypto market and making money off of it, honestly, like, and when to get out and when to get in. It's because we
overthink it.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
Oh, it's like, I didn't overthink today. It's just like, there's a big crash.
Yeah. Yeah, always buy when your gut tells you not to. We hear that over and over in this, so
yeah.
But yeah, that was a good topic.
A good topic. There was actually a few things, since it is Friday. I think I've talked to you about this. Is that every Friday I'm actually compounding interest of what I'm earning on my crypto.
Okay.
And I have a decently diverse portfolio for everything I'm in DeFi for. So Algorand, Matic, and Harmony are the big three. Harmony, I'm not actually doing DeFi right now. I'm just doing simple staking. So it's basically claiming the rewards and putting them back into stake. And that's what I'm doing there. But Matic and Algorand, I am actually doing DeFi. And one of the most frustrating things actually happened on Matic. And basically, it is supposed to be the layer 2 to Ethereum, which is supposed to be fast and stable. And I actually had the transaction fail on me 4 times before I could get it to go through.
Oh, wow.
And it actually didn't go through until I was finally able to check up on it when I got home. Basically, I guess there was a lot of network traffic. So basically, it pushed the gas fee way up. So since I didn't actually have enough slippage, and we're actually talking about, because basically it's Elk Finance, because I'm actually doing DeFi there for Elk, because Elk is a bridge of only Elk, but between a lot of different cryptos, including Harmony. And I've actually used their bridge between the two, and it actually works fairly well. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's a recommendation, but it works fairly well as a bridge. If you're wanting to be able to bridge, that is not necessarily a standard, chain supported bridge. You need to be able to get something out. You can do it through Elk. It's kind of expensive, though. That's a side note. But that's where the compounding was actually failing, was on Elk Finance. And a lot of it just had to do with the gas fees. And I was just, thinking about this, and which leads to the second thought, which goes back to that video. And I said we'll bring this up later, is the way NFTs actually currently work is that what's on blockchain is a JSON file with a hash and a reference to a interplanetary file system, IPFS, link to the JPEG you own or GIF. or PNG or whatever it is. If for some reason IPFS decides to forget about that thing that you have, all you own is the metadata, because that's what's on blockchain.
Right.
And that came up during that Algorand talk. And they said that because of the work that they're actually doing with the digital IDs, it's going to become possible to actually inscribe an entire MP3 into, and this is where things get weird. It sounded like, and I'd have to listen to this again. That's why I wanted you to listen. So please do, and then you can correct me on this. And if anybody has a better understanding of it, please correct me. But it sounded like basically inscribing, you can inscribe an entire binary on chain, but in kind of an immutable way because you control it. So that means you can take an MP3 and put it on blockchain, and you literally for life own it, and it won't go away until you decide to say, well, I need to free up space on the blockchain, so I'm going to remove it. So it's now no longer reliant on this third-party thing. So when you say, I owned this thing, you actually do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing and the area where they were talking about when they were talking about the distributed IDs and other stuff. And that's why NFTs came up, because that was part of the discussion. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I'm like, and I already knew this about NFTs. And the only NFTs I ever got into were ones that were not just the social piece of NFTs. You know, like a lot of celebrities got into, what was that one that was really popular last cycle? The monkey ones. Remember those?
Yeah. I can't remember. It's
the Bored Apes.
Bored Apes. That's it. Yes.
Yes. And all those are PNGs.
Yep.
That's it. That they have no utility.
No.
Right. And
the uniqueness is what made them valuable.
Right. It was the uniqueness that made them valuable. And if they disappeared on IPFS, all you'd have left is that hash inside of Ethereum. That's it.
Right.
You know, so the only NFTs that I personally got into were the ones that had utility, or basically there was supposed to be a game that was getting produced. One of the ones was it Knights and Peasants?
Yeah, Knights and Peasants.
That was a big one. And it started on Harmony and moved. It effectively moved to Matic. Technically, it still exists on Harmony.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like in this weird in-between thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of existing in both places. I think the greater supports the Matic network. Or should I say Polygon? It's a Matic token, but it's Polygon. I don't know how to say it, but either way.
Yeah.
You know, so in those cases, there's a gaming company or just a group of developers that are trying to their best to support it. It has utility. You know, if there's, and the biggest thing is, it's like, the developers and the application drive users, and it's the users that typically drive the market. And that's where I try to find, things. And there was actually a card game that started on Harmony. And for the life of me, it's just like, I don't know what they're trying to do, but I forgot that. I have to look it up. But basically, it was a tradable card game. And the cool thing about it is like you think about, I'm trying not to go geek here, but for the people that, play Magic the Gathering, when you're holding the cards, for the most part, that there are rare cards, is that they are hard to find. It's like, because you're buying booster packs, they're not going to be in there, and you buy a lot of them, and then you might find this card that you're looking for. There is a real rarity when it comes to print. Well, how do you do that in digital world? And how do you prove it? Because now there's a Magic the Gathering app you can download to your phone, and yeah, you can keep buying booster packs. And it's like, well, if it's a rare card and it says it's rare, well, if everybody just gives enough money, How do you know everybody doesn't already have one because they just gave enough money? It's not provably rare.
Right.
Well, I mean, this game was actually built onto a blockchain. Now you can actually query the blockchain and say, how many of this card exists and who has them? You can actually prove rarity.
Okay.
Right? It's just like, so it's like, I'm me knowing I played Magic when I was in high school. I loved the game back then. It became unplayable to me, in the early 2000s. I stopped playing it. But I was like, that is cool. I like that idea. I spent probably too much on it on the Harmony Network. And they straight up said that their development is going to move to Matic, to Polygon. And your card set should have moved with you. I put in a ticket with them, and to this day, I only see 2 cards in my Polygon wallet, even after they say they fixed it.
Right.
I don't know if that's by design or what, but I was like, you know what? It's just lost to me. I'm forgetting about it because it's not worth the stress to me.
Yeah.
It's just. And again, that goes back to everything that we already discussed when it comes to the Harmony Network. Could it come back as a good technology? I'm not saying it's not a good technology. It is a very good technology. It is. It checks a lot of boxes.
The support now is the problem. But
yeah. That's why it's like, you're adding a couple different ones, but my big 3 right now is XRP, Algorand, and big 4. XRP, Algorand, HBAR, and Casper. Those are my big 4. Those are the ones that I'm paying the most attention to personally. I do pay attention to Bitcoin because I know how it fits in historically. I keep doing this in a self-deprecating manner. I'm the dumbass that didn't invest into it back in, early when it first came out because I knew about it when it was pennies.
Right.
But it's just like you don't know until you know.
Exactly. Hindsight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have anything thoughts? I think I've been carrying the conversation.
Yeah, it's fun. It was good. I think I'm out of a drink, so we're kind of.
You've been looking to end it.
To the end. Well, no, not necessarily. Just I was listening too.
Yeah.
But I think we hit on some good stuff here. That was just the possibilities of, and then what could be, and what we both kind of see potentially in the future. It's interesting to me. That's the stuff I like. That's why I love this stuff, because it's like, sure, the money's cool. It'd be awesome to make $1 million and be able to retire early, but the technology of it and what the possibilities are is the cool.
And that's where you get the flip of the coin, because it is 50-50.
Yeah.
Because with this digital technology, are we heading towards the more free future? Or are we heading towards the more dystopian future?
Yeah.
It is a flip of the coin.
Yeah.
And it's highly dependent on the user base. There's this popular meme that I see, this picture, and it basically it hits the nail on the head. It's basically a bunch of people kneeled on the floor with basically a board game on top of them, and then basically the oligarchs playing a game on top of them. The game ends when the people stand up.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. No matter what, the majority are going to buy into what's easy. If it's easy and what's a mainstream, that's what the majority will buy into.
And that's where I have to cry a little, because that turns into the question: who provides the easy? Where does it come from? Right. And that's where it's still the coin flip. And yeah. Well, no. Yeah. Dude, I don't think it's a coin flip. I think it's 80-20.
Yeah.
We've been both in the government space. When was the last time government produced something that was easy?
Yeah. I know. I know where you're going with that. But so yeah, I know. But I don't think government's going to produce it. I think government's going to
No, pay somebody to produce it.
exactly.
But I mean, look at the Affordable Care Act. Government put how much money into these websites, and they were absolutely broken.
That's because they go to the lowest bidder on everything they do.
Yeah, and then they had to up the money and get people to come in and fix it, and finally, and then it eventually became usable.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Exactly.
And that's the thing is like you're probably. I would imagine a lot of these sites were because they're all by state. Those sites are it's all state driven essentially. But I would imagine a lot of the companies that were doing it were new at doing that technology and be able to support that. So they were probably learning as they went a little bit. That's why it didn't work at first, and then eventually. I mean, we saw that here during the pandemic, and Maryland said, you're going to get or the whole country was saying you're going to get all this stipend money and people who are getting stay home and get unemployment. In Maryland, the website for unemployment was redone to be able to support it, and they struggled because it was new. It was like the worst time in the world to redo it, but I think they needed to redo it to be able to support what was happening. So they literally could not support it, and because it was getting pounded. Like there was just the website was just not, it would just crash constantly because it was just getting pounded. And what it was is they weren't scaling. They weren't able to scale because it was a new company. There's some small, I forget it was some small company that developed it and was basically the lowest bidder at the time to be able to do it. And they just didn't understand the technology or even had the foresight because of their experience to see that this thing is going to get pounded. We need to be able to scale this quickly. I mean, eventually they figured it out and it all worked great, but it's this, goes back to that lowest bidder.
And for a lot of laymen's, scaling is not a simple problem because it happens on different layers.
Yeah.
You can have a high scalable software, but if you don't have the hardware to back that software up, you're going to fail. Yeah, but if you have the good hardware, it doesn't matter how good hardware you have. If the software is not designed to scale, you're going to fail.
Right.
And then there's that, middleware in between that is actually the runtime environment. If it's not built to scale, it doesn't matter what you do, hardware or software side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure they were in some cloud and it was a scalable cloud like Amazon Web Services, but they probably had a limitation on how much they could scale to, and they're probably hitting that threshold, and they, not realizing, again, goes back to experience. It's understanding that you've been doing this. If you're new at doing it and never seeing it actually happen, and honestly, though, I mean, nobody predicted any of that. So they're, to play devil's advocate there, nobody knew how much you would need to be able to scale to, but I'm sure, I don't know. I just know it was down. That's all I know. It was, and they kept saying we were working on it. And I just knowing that they had just built it. And this was kind of like just starting with it. And I understand that environment and what they're doing. And I understand they probably moved it to the clouds. That's where everybody's moving to because of the cost effectiveness of it and this, scalability of it. But you do set thresholds on that. So I'm guessing they probably were hitting the threshold on how it would scale because a lot of it's automatic. A lot of it, especially in Amazon Web Services, it's automatic. It just scales to what you need. But I believe you can set those limitations in order to make sure it doesn't scale to the point if something happens where it's scaling so much that it's costing you more than your budget will allow. So it's,
there are inherent limits when you're talking about that. Is like that.
But again, goes back.
It's like
the point is the lowest bidder is always the winner, and that's why we have these issues with the government.
I mean, so in other words, back to the original point.
Yeah.
So if it's not 50-50. Ain't going either direction. Do you think I'm right at 80-20, or do you think it's closer to a 60-40, or what do you think?
I don't know. I don't predict.
I mean, because you're talking about this experience.
Yeah, I know, but I don't like predictions. So
You don't.
no,
I know that, but I want to force you into one. I'm going to bully you here.
no.
No. Come on.
Not happening. It's not who I am.
I think that I really think that if the free market, if they are truly being a free market, and that really comes into question here, right? Because it could be 80-20 in either direction. And I could justify that in two ways, right? Because if we are talking about, and we are really talking about Steve Jobs, 1990 Apple, going into the 2000s Apple with Steve Jobs on his return, introducing the iPhone, right? That is pure free market, satisfying effectively a market need, right? An easy to use mobile device that brings basically the internet and computing to your pocket.
They were still abiding by government regulations because FCC.
Well, that is true, but but that's not where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Right? Because we go back to this XRP thing that we've been talking about on and off on these episodes.
Yeah.
Is the interaction between some of these crypto companies and government entities. I'm not just talking about the US, but I'm talking about worldwide. And some of these other governments are not as necessarily, they might be more crypto friendly, but they are not nearly as free as, the people of the United States. In other words, they have, I
understand. Yeah.
Right. So in other words, it might be a free market solution, but tailored to what the government of this state or this region is stating.
Yeah.
And then that becomes adopted as effectively the standard because there is no borders when it comes to crypto.
Right.
I mean, that's why you could actually say it could go either way. Is this like, is there going to be a man, I'm brain farting the name. Somebody help me out here. I don't know. It's like the progenitor of the GNU project. You don't know his name?
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I have a hard time agreeing with him on a lot of things. He basically wrote the GPL or the GNU public license, and my aspect when it comes to free software, because I do believe software should be free and openly available. But at the same time, I don't like the GPL because it's a viral license. So if you adopt a license, so if you start developing something in the license, or you or include something that's part of that license, now everything is that license. You don't have effectively a legal choice in this. You can get sued, and there are actually big foundations now that actually have the war chest to be able to do it. I like open software, but I also like giving the people to be free, the freedom of, if you want to be an asshole and not share your source code, to be the asshole. The amount of BSD code that's actually in Windows, it's hilarious.
Right.
Because Microsoft has to demonstrate that they are using BSD code.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that. I think it is fine. It's like, if you want to restrict yourself and not share the changes that you made, that's on you. You're just showing your true colors. But telling me that I have to share my changes, I don't like that either. That's why I like the BSD license so much, or the MIT license. I like these more liberal or open source licenses. And but basically, I was getting back to the progenitor of the GPL. But there has to be a way of, even outside of the Algorand Foundation, outside of XRP, somebody like that will actually come up with an open source design or implementation for digital identity that is truly open source and free. And here turns to the problem, with that is, it's like, Linux has been around since the early 90s. I am currently running this entire web channel on Linux, but I'm a technical person. I think it's actually really easy personally. I think it's actually gotten extraordinarily easy. I think it's easier than Windows at this point, but people refuse to move. And I am still only 2% of the worldwide population.
Right.
Right? You have corporations trying to design the stuff. Open source over here. That's where the flip comes on the other side. It's like you still have these corporations still working with government, trying to work inside the system, trying to play nice so they don't get squashed by the regulations and the regulators. That's why I say 80-20. It's not 50-50. I'm not picking the winner of that 80-20. But the one thing that is true on either side of it is that for it to get mass adoption, it has to be easy.
Yeah, that's literally
that is it.
Yep.
Is that once it's mass adopted, that sets the future until basically there's a mass corona ejection and it basically disables all electronics across the entire planet. Right?
Right.
I'm just like, once you're either in pure freedom or pure dystopian, that is our locked future. That's where we're heading. One or the other. I mean, you can say they're 50-50 branches, but getting there is not 50-50 when you're actually thinking about it.
Okay.
But, I mean, do you agree or not?
I mean, I could agree with that. I see what you're saying now.
But you're also out of drink, so.
Yeah, I digress a little bit too. Yeah.
I know I probably got too far in the weeds a little bit for this channel, but.
Yeah, but no, that's fine. That's what we're here for. That's what we're doing. We're just chatting. It's our conversation. We're
sharing our conversation.
Sharing with others. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what happens sometimes.
All right. Well, I'm about wrapped up myself. So do you want to ready to close this out?
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Jesse. This is Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Till next time.
Till next time.